to honour and commemorate the father of Irish republicanism, Theobald Wolfe Tone. It's great to see people from all over Ireland and further afield, and especially old comrades. It's an honour for me to chair the event, and I thank the organising committee for that. Lots of great Irish Republicans have chaired and addressed gatherings here at Wolfe Tone's graveside over the years. Tom Clark, Pádraig Pearse, Liam Mellows, Jim McAllister, to name but a few. How would Tone and them feel today, listening to people tell us that Britain is an honest broker in Ireland? The Craigavon too lying in jail this past 16 years despite their innocence. Shea Reynolds, 7 years on remand with no bail. The Noah Donohoe ongoing cover-up. The treatment of the Brown family in Balahi and other state-sponsored collusion cases. MI5 in control of everything. The recent extraditions of Martin Macaulay, Sean Walsh and Jim Donegan given over to the notorious British legal system. If Tone were alive, they'd hand him over today. Break the connection with England. That's what Tone and the United Irishmen called for. Britain is not an honest broker in Ireland. We hope today we can re-emphasise the noble and straightforward ideals Tone and his comrades wished for. I'd also like to thank the National Graves Association for accommodating us and putting up the flags. You might notice collection buckets here today. These are for the NGA. There will be no collection for anyone else. I'd ask you all to give what you can. The NGA relies solely on donations. They receive no grants or state funding. Gora mai agat. We will now proceed with today's ceremony. We will now have the 1798 proclamation read by Cot Inglis. Is Cot here? It's okay. I told her to take her time earlier, but... Yep. Take care. Let's see if I can get that microphone down there where you need it.
This draft proclamation by the United Irishmen never got published due to treachery, but it encompasses everything they set out to achieve. Today we are proud to read it aloud. Irishmen, your country is free and you are about to be avenged. That vile government which has so long and so cruelly oppressed you is no more. Some of its most atrocious monsters have already paid the forfeit of their lives, and the rest are in our hands. The national flag, the sacred green, is at this moment flying over the ruins of despotism and the capital, which a few years past has witnessed debauchery, the plots and cruelty of your tyrants, and is now the citadel of triumphant patriotism. Arise then, the United Sons of Ireland. Arise like a great and powerful nation, determined to live free or die. Arm yourselves by whatever means in your power. Consider that for every enemy you disarm, you arm a friend. In the cause of liberty, an action is cowardice, and the coward shall forfeit his property he has not the courage to possess. Yes, Irishmen, we swear by that eternal justice in whose cause we fight, that the brave patriot who survived the present glorious struggle and the family of those who have fallen shall receive from the hands of a grateful nation ample recompense. Their names shall be inscribed on the great national record of Irish Revolution as a glorious example to posterity. We also promise to punish robbers with death and infamy. We also promise that never to sheath the sword until every being in this country has those equal rights of which the God of nature has given. Rouse all the energies of your soul, call forth all the merit and abilities which will see a victorious government consigned to obscurity and under the conduct of your leaders march to victory. Heed not the bear of the hired soldiers or aristocrat yeomanry. They cannot stand the vigorous shock of Freeman and the detested government of England, to which we vow eternal hatred, to learn the treasures that exhaust honest accounted slaves for the purpose of butchering Irishmen, shall but further enable us to turn the sword on its devoted head. Many of the military feel the love of liberty glow within their breasts and have also joined the national standard. But for the wretch who turns the sword against his native country, let the national vengeance be visited upon him, let him find no quarter. Vengeance, Irishmen, vengeance on your oppressors. Remember what thousands of your dearest friends have perished by their merciless orders. Remember their burnings, remember their rackings, their torturing, their military massacres, and their legal murders. Remember William Orr.
I have another announcement to make for any of you that are looking food or beverages after the commemoration. It'll be in the Townhouse Hotel in Naas. We will now have the lament and the lowering of the flags. We will now have a couple of announcements to make here. There will be a hunger strike commemoration in Dungarvan, County Waterford at 3 p.m. on Sunday, June the 22nd. The speaker will be Gerald Lynch, brother of hunger striker Kevin. I have another announcement to make in a second, but I'm just letting everybody know we'll be laying the wreaths. So I'll be doing that in 1 second. There also will be an annual Senate's Cross commemoration on Saturday, June the 21st at 6 p.m. The speaker again will be Gerald Lynch, brother of hunger striker Kevin, and that's in Mooncoin, County Kilkenny. So now we'll go to the laying of the wreaths. I have them here in no particular order, somewhere. First wreath on behalf of the National Independent Republican Commemoration Committee to be led by Paddy Burke. Next read on behalf of Dublin Independent Republicans to be led by Grania Gibson. Next read, the Independent Republicans Armagh by ex-prisoner Robbie Davison. Next read will be led on behalf of the family of Michael Gahan. Teresa, his sister, and Gussie are here, and it will be led by his nephew, Martin. Next read on behalf of the Irish Republican Socialist Party. Next read will be led on behalf of Tipperary Independent Republicans by ex-prisoner and Republican Peter Rogers. Just as an aside, Peter and 6 other comrades escaped from the Maidstone in the 70s, and him and 1 other man are only 2 remaining. Next read is from the Connolly Youth Movement, from young Adam I met on the road there, can't remember his second name. Derry City Independent Republicans, the ex-prisoner and Republican Danny McBrearty. Next read on behalf of Lasher Jarrett Eamon Clark. Next read on behalf of Belfast Republicans by ex-prisoner Fergal Maguire. The next wreath on behalf of Poblachtony, Corky, Kyle O'Donovan. Next wreath from Ura Nua. Next wreath on behalf of the Tom Clark Sean Hogan Committee in Tipperary, to be led by Tom Hennessy. Next wreath on behalf of the pikemen of Enniscorthy, by Paul Murphy. The next wreath is on behalf of Dacia Republicans, by Paul Fitzgerald. Next wreath on behalf of the Senate's Cross 1921 Ambush Committee, County Kilkenny, and to be led by Gerard Foran. That's all the wreaths I have here, but if there's any other wreaths that need to be led, could you please come forward now? Oh, sorry, Joseph. From Jim Donegan, Independent Republican, South Armagh, to be led by Joseph. And as you know, Jim was recently extradited. That concludes the wreaths. I'll just go to the next bit of business. 1 second. Now we come to our first speaker of today. Our first speaker here will speak about the work and the activities of the National Graves Association, who also maintain the monument here in this cemetery. He has been chairperson of the NGA the past 15 years and represents the association with great dignity. We are very honoured to have him. Please welcome Sean Whelan.
Good morning, Sean. When I told Sean, was Mr. Sean O'Fallon, and I was talking, I hear like them coming doing in the Luca Gale. As Sean said, I'll say a few words about the grave and about this particular grave. As most of you know, it has been in the care of the National Graves Association for over 100 years. In 1871, a group of men got together who were all Fenians or ex-Fenians, and they set up an association they called the Young Irelanders Graves and Monuments Committee. They had three aims. One, to locate as many patriot graves as they possibly could. Two, to properly mark all such graves, and 3, to keep a record of them. They carried that work on until the arrival of 1916, when obviously with the events of 1916, the Tan War, the Civil War, the committee ceased to function. However, in 1926, many of those members got back together again, and they were joined by wonderful people like Kathleen Clark, whose husband Tom and only brother both died, were both executed in 1916, and Joe Clark, who fought so valiantly at Mount Street Bridge. They set out the rules that Shawnee mentioned earlier on, where the graves don't only accept money from government, they don't accept monies from political parties. That was done in order to guard the independence of the association going forward, which is why today the National Graves is still an independent, non-aligned individual organisation with no allegiance to any other organisation whatsoever. The main function of the National Graves Association is the care of the some 2,000 graves and monuments in the care of the association. Over the years, the graves have done other functions. For example, Kilmainham Jail was due for destruction in the 1930s, and there was a campaign by the National Graves which saved it. It is now the second most visited museum in the country. I'm sure many of you are aware that in 1936, the National Graves Association erected the headstone over the then unmarked grave of the Mountjoy martyrs, the 10 young men who were executed in Mountjoy during the Tan War. At the same time, they started a campaign to have all 10 men disinterred and reinterred, which took until 2001. In the meantime, they carried out numerous such campaigns, so today, the only Patriot Irish dead who we know the location of that were buried in the prison grounds are the 5 Invincibles who are still buried in Kilmainham. Our current campaign is designed to try and end that. That has been complete the circle. There will be no more Irish Patriots buried in prison grounds as we know the location of. In relation to this grave, Wolfe Tones, we know that by 1899, this grave was in the care of a group called the Committee for the Commemorative Committee of Wolfe Tone. We believe that was a subcommittee of the Young Irelanders Graves and Monuments Committee. From 1926 up until the 60s, quite a lot of work was done on this grave by the National Graves Association, but in 1961, the UVF blew it up. Now, the Graves Committee at the time, instead of seeing this as a setback, saw it as an opportunity. They applied to Kildare County Council to build the monument you see here today. So the result of the UVF blowing up this monument in 1969 is the monument you see here today. Again, as you can see, it was renovated in 1994 and again a few years ago. In another event that we have to mention is that in 1975, allegedly by the UVF, there was a plot to blow up a train bringing members of the Workers' Party from Belfast down here. It would seem that the idea of the plot was to blame another Republican group, thus causing more division. However, a local man out walking his dog named Christopher Phelan spotted them, they attacked him and murdered him brutally. The weapon that was used to murder him turned out to be a British Army issued knife. Now today, this month, is the 50th anniversary of Christopher Phelan's death, so we remember him here today. It's important to say that the National Graves Association defends the right of all groups to commemorate their dead of all conflicts on all sides. However, in remembering the past, we believe that pride of place should always go to those who are willing to give up their lives in protection of their own country, striving for their own freedom. It is only in Ireland where a sizable number of commentators and politicians argue that parity of esteem should be given to those who died fighting for their country's freedom and those who died fighting to stop them. Before I leave, I'd like to say that the National Graves Association, by its nature, has no role to play in the political process. However, we do believe that the only proper fitting monument to Wolfe Tone that can be built, and to all the tens of thousands of other Irish men and women who lost their lives in the struggle for freedom down the years, is a free, united Republic of Ireland. Thank you.
Well, Sean, well spoken, very well put. Now also, just as we get a chance here, I'd like to thank the bands, James Connolly Band, from Derry City represent the Republican Socialist Movement. Please give them a big round of applause. Personally thank Paddy Moran for all his help in getting them here. Thank you very much, Paddy. Also, go ahead. Also want to thank the Sons of Ireland band over here from Resharpen, as usual, showing up brilliantly, same as the James Connolly band, and representing themselves and their area really well. Big round of applause. Now we will have a recitation of the man from God knows where by our musician, artist and Republican Malachy O'Neill.
The following poem was written in 1899 by Alice Mary Wilson. It tells the story of Thomas Russell, the man from God knows where. He was born in Cork, 1767, executed in 1803 in Mount Bradford jail. The setting is in a little town of Comber, just outside Sainfield in County Down, and the locals welcome a stranger into the tavern. In our townland on a night of snow rode a man from God knows where, and none of us bade him stay or go, or deemed him friend or damned him foe, but was stabled his big roan mare, for in our townland we're decent folk, and if he didn't speak, well, none of us spoke, and we sat at the fire burned low. We're a civil sort in our wee place, so we made the circle wide around Andy Lemon's cheerful blaze, and we wished the man the length of his days and a good end to his ride. He smiled under his slouchy hat, says he, there's a bit of a joke in that, for we ride in different ways. The whiles we smoked, we watched him stir from the seat for an instant low. I nudged Joe Moore, you wouldn't dare to ask him where he's for meeting there, and how far he has to go. And Joe wouldn't dare, nor Wally Scott, and he took no drink, neither cow nor hat, this man from God knows where. It was closing time and late for by when us ones braved the air. I never saw a worse may I'll ever die than the sleep that night. And I says I, you'll find he's for stopping there. But at the cricket edge with the gable pane, I watched him spurring the pelting rain and I juked from his roving eye. 2 winters more and then the trouble here, when the best that a man could feel was the pipe that he kept in Highlands near to the blood of hate and the blood of fear would be redder than the rust on the steel. Us ones quit from minding the farms. Let them take what they give at the weight of our arms from Saintfield to Kilkeel. In the time of the worry we had no lead. We all of us fought with the rest. And if one of us shook like a trembling reed, none of us give neither hint nor heed. Not ever, even if we'd guessed. We men of the north had a word to say, and we said it in our own dour way, and we spoke as we thought was best. All over Ulster the women cried for the standing crops in the land. Many's a sweetheart and many's a bride would liefer have gone to where he died and had mourned her lone fair man. But us ones weathered the thick of it, and we used to dander along and sit in Andy side by side. What with the scores going to and fro, the night would be wearing thin. Yet never so late when you rose to go, but someone would say, do you mind on snow and your man who came wandering in? And then we fall to talk again, if by any chance he was one of them, this man who rode like the wind. Well, it was getting on past the heat of the year when I rode to Newtown Fair. I sold as I could, the dealers were near, only £3.8 for the inner steer, and not at all for the mare. And Matt McKee in the hill of the street, says he, the grass has grown under our feet since the Hanjung war here. And he told me that Boney had promised help to a man in Dublin town. Says he, if you laid the pike on the shelf, you better go home hot foot by yourself and once more take it down. So by Comber Road I trotted the grain and never cut corn until Killalay stood playing on the rising ground. For a wean of days we sat waiting on the word to rise and go at it like men. But no French ship sailed into Flocky Bay. And we heard the black news on a harvest day that the cause was lost again. And Joey and me and Willie Y. Scott Ye grieve yourselves as lief as not, we'd have been found in the thick of the slain. By Downpatrick's jail I was bound to fur on the day I remember fit. But when I came to the prison square, the people were waiting in their hundreds there, and you wouldn't hear stir nor breath. For the soldiers were standing grim and tall for round a scaffold built for against the wall, and a man stepped out for death. I was brave and near the edge of the throng, yet I knew the face again, and I knew the step, and I knew the walk, and I knew the sound of a strange up-country talk where he spoke out right into the end. Then he bowed his head to the swinging rope, whilst I said, praise God to his dying hope, and amen to his dying prayer. That the wrong would cease and the right prevail, for the man that hung in Downpatrick jail was a man from God knows where.
Brilliant, Dolly. Good on my abbot. I would also like to thank the pikemen here from Wexford who are so magnificently turned out. And the local reenactment group here from Kildare who are absolutely, again, fantastic. Brilliant. We now go to our next speaker. Our next speaker is all the way from America. A founder member of Irish Northern Aid. He has flown over especially for today's ceremony. He currently runs Radio Free Erin in New York. I now introduce you to John McDonagh.
It's an honor to be at the gravesite of Theobald Wolfe, the founding father of Irish Republicans. And a great honor for me to be on the same platform as Sean Crawley and Sean Whelan of the National Graves Association. This journey for me began last week in Brooklyn, New York. I stood at the grave of Matilda Tone, Wolfe Tone's wife, who was buried in Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, New York. That is where my pilgrimage began to come here today to honor her husband here at his final resting place in Bodenstown. The connection between Ireland and New York is more than symbolic. It runs deep in Irish history and the struggle. From Michael Davitt and the Land League raising funds in the Bronx, to the Fenian Brotherhood headquartered on Broadway, to the Clan of Gael planning resistance from New York basements. The flame of Irish freedom has long burned on both sides of the Atlantic. O'Donovan Ross's body had to travel from New York to be buried in Irish soil, but it carried the fire of rebellion with it. Patrick Pearse knew the significance of the New York connection. Wolfe Tone said, break the connection with England was the first principle of Irish nationalism. He didn't say to negotiate it. He didn't say to manage it. He didn't say to share it. He said to break it. And while some who are in power today try to rewrite that legacy, we are here to preserve it in memory and truth. That's why I'm so grateful that an organization like the Independent Dublin Republicans that not only helped organize this national commemoration, but they ensure that Irish Republicans are given the send-off they deserve with an Irish Republican funeral. They uphold that sacred tradition. Because if they didn't do it, who would? There's forces out there in the media and in Leinster House who want to whitewash the struggle, to erase the names and sacrifices of the men and women who gave everything for a 32-county republic. I told Jerry McNamara recently that I read at the end of his life Brendan Behan, who lit up the West End of London, and he was the toast of Broadway in New York, but his final wish was to have a Republican funeral. And Jerry told me that his own uncle stood as an honor guard at Brendan Behan's funeral. That tradition lives on through men like Jerry, and it does matter. What a contrast to the trial last month in Dublin, where a man from Belfast worked hard to convince a jury that he was never involved in the Republican movement, and he won. So let us hope that when his time comes, he will get his wish. No tricolor, no firing party. Let his friends in Leinster House in Westminster do the honors, toasting him for a job well done. We are living in challenging times where the Free State government is extraditing Republicans to the north to be tried under British law and British judges. These are the same politicians who swan around in their government cars, their salaries, their pensions, their bodyguards, all at the expense of Irish Republicans who paid in blood so they could stay in power. All their perks and mercs were all earned on another man's wound. But here today, we remember the man who didn't settle. Wolfe Tone dreamed of a nation that would not compromise, a nation of equals, a sovereign republic. We will not forget that this is a promise that Ireland still owns Wolfe Tone. And I just want to say, before I left Matilda Tone's grave, I scooped up some of the soil in front of it, and I brought it over with me. And Jerry McNamara is going to help spread it now on her husband's grave.
That was obviously something we were made aware of it would be going to happen. And I think, according to people who know the ceremonies well, better than us, the Graves Association, I think that's the first time that ever happened. So that's a magnificent thing that is after happening. I now just one more notice before I introduce my next guest. There will be an unveiling of a new mural in Lenadoon in relation to the breaking of the IRA ceasefire in 1972. The Battle of Lenadoon will be unveiled at the exact spot where it happened in Lower Lenadoon at 7 p.m. on Saturday, the 12th of July. You'll not forget that date. All welcome. We will now, before I get our next speaker on, we will have a lament by a member of the James Connolly Band here for a couple of minutes interlude for Caleb Murphy. Give him a big round of applause. was brilliant again. Another big round of applause for that young fella. I now introduce you to our last speaker. As I mentioned at the start, many great Republicans have addressed Republican gatherings at Bowden's time, and our next speaker falls into that category. I first met him in Portlaoise jail in the early 80s. He was very politically aware, and his military expertise was impeccable, much of which he passed on to others involved in the struggle. He was a very modest and decent person, and still is to this day. I now introduce you to author, Republican, and my friend and comrade, John Crawley.
It's great to see such a wonderful turnout today. Wolfe Tone died in prison, alone, surrounded by his enemies, but he lies here today surrounded by his friends and comrades, and it's great to see it. Why do we gather today at the grave of this Church of Ireland patriot, who never considered for a moment that because he was Protestant, he was British? Why did Patrick Pearse believe that Wolfe Tone was the greatest of Irish nationalists, the greatest of Irish men? Who was this young Kildare lawyer whom the Duke of Wellington said was a most extraordinary man? With 100 guineas in his pocket, unknown, unrecommended, and without friends, he went to Paris and persuaded the French government to send an army of 15,000 men to overthrow British authority in Ireland. This was an achievement of genius. Thomas Davis and the Young Irelanders laid a stone on this grave in 1844. The IRB, the Irish Volunteers, and the Irish Citizens Army all gathered here over the years. Tom Clark, executed in 1916, spoke here on 4 consecutive occasions. Liam Mellows, later executed by the Free State, spoke beside this grave to the Four Courts garrison just before the start of the Civil War. So too has a succession of Sticks, Provosts, and Fianna Fáilers. Many wish to pay homage to his inspirational life, others to opportunistically bask in his reflected glory. Some to claim his posthumous endorsement of one Republican project, or to imply he would have supported the surrender of another. All gathered here because few in Irish history talk the talk and walk the walk like Theobald Wolfe Tone. Wolfe Tone did not view himself as a Protestant of ascendancy or the plantation, but of the Enlightenment. It was Wolfe Tone who gave the United Irishmen their name. Founded in Belfast in 1791, they were not campaigning for United Ireland in the territorial sense. Ireland wasn't partitioned until 1922. They were seeking to unite Irishmen in the interest of Ireland as opposed to dividing Irishmen in the interest of England. The Irish people, Tone wrote, had one common interest and one common enemy. The manifesto of the United Irishmen declared, "We have no national government. We are ruled by Englishmen and the servants of Englishmen, whose object is the interest of another country, whose instrument is corruption, whose strength is the weakness of Ireland." Ireland still has no national government. There is an Irish government in Dublin, but it is not the government of Ireland. There are 2 governments of Ireland, one based in Minster House and the other at Westminster in London. Stormont is a regional assembly of the British Parliament. Instead of national politics, we have partition politics. And who could look at Stormont and Britain's Secretary of State and deny that part of Ireland continues to be ruled by Englishmen and the servants of Englishmen? Unionists never had an issue with the United Ireland per se. They lived in United Ireland under Crown jurisdiction for hundreds of years. The Orange Order is an all-Ireland institution. The Presbyterian and Methodist churches are all Ireland ministries. And of course, the Church of Ireland is not the Church of Northern Ireland. Their real objection is becoming subject to the democratic decision-making of a national electorate that contains a Catholic majority. When Republicans speak of reaching out to Unionists, we mean reaching out to them as fellow citizens and not as foreigners who happen to live here. Foreigners are born in another country. The vast majority of Ulster Unionists were born in Ireland. They must not be treated as the civil garrison of an alien state. That is not pluralism. That is submitting to the social and political modelling of colonial conquest. Patrick Pearse said of Wolfe Tone, "He has spoken for all time, and his voice resounds throughout Ireland, calling to us from this grave when we wander astray, following other voices that ring less true. Today, the voices that ring less true tell us that far from breaking the English connection, we must work within it. That sectarianism, inequality, and partition will eventually be ended by collaborating with the government that created and sustains them. If you want to believe that, then work away. Good luck to you. If you manage to get elected or co-opted to storm it, the British government will subsidise your belief with a salary, expenses, and ultimately a pension. But don't internalise Britain's pacification project and call it a Republican peace strategy. We have had pacification many times in our history. We have it now. However, we will never achieve lasting peace in our country until the root cause of conflict is definitively addressed, which is Britain's claim to govern any part of Ireland. Irish republicanism is fundamentally about replacing sectarian and ethnic divisions with united civic identity in a sovereign republic. It is not about a shared island rooted in British-Irish identity politics. Many supporters of the Good Friday Agreement believe the Intergovernmental British-Irish Council should keep functioning even after a pro-unity referendum is won, so that Britain can continue to represent its citizens in the northeast of Ireland. Far from achieving sovereignty over our whole territory and population, a part of Ireland will continue to be administered under British government supervision. Many shared islanders also advocate a continuation of Stormont and champion an enduring role for the British royal family as an institutional point of reference for the loyalties of those who would prefer to see themselves as a civic outpost of London rather than as equal citizens of a national democracy. A 32-county state built upon the political architecture of the Good Friday Agreement will not be a united Ireland. A shared Ireland means we share in Britain's analysis of the nature of the conflict as a domestic dispute between sectarian factions. We share in the colonial legacy of sectarian apartheid, and we share in the imperial project of divide and rule. Differences that will become incidental in a genuine republic remain fundamental in a shared island. The shared islanders call on us to embrace these differences for the sake of peace, as opposed to Tone's Republican vision of ending these differences for the sake of peace. Robert Emmet cannot request that his epitaph be withheld until his country has taken its place as two nations among the nations of the earth. Those who believe that unionists may be enticed into a 32-county state by discarding or eroding Irish national flags and symbols, by changing the national anthem, by chasing English royalty around Ireland, or by attending British war memorials, forget that Ulster Unionists chose to opt out of joining the 26-county state in 1922 when that state had substantially closer links with Britain than it does today. The Free State government had retracted its allegiance to the Irish Republic, set up a subordinate parliament in the name of the King, took an oath to be faithful to that King, was a member of the British Commonwealth, and was eagerly murdering Republicans with arms supplied by the British government. And yet, Unionists wanted no part of it then and want no part of it now. Britain ensures they don't have to. Republicans know that a genuine process of national reconciliation can only begin when Britain leaves Ireland and can no longer interfere in our internal affairs. This includes Britain's claim to act on behalf of Ulster Unionists in a future non-partition Ireland. Britain was awarded no right to represent Ulster Unionists in the three Ulster counties incorporated into the Free State in 1922. Many of these Unionists in Cavan, Monaghan and Donegal had signed the Ulster Covenant and were as loyal to the Crown in their day as their brethren a mile up the road in Fermanagh or Tyrone are today. 103 years later, their descendants are still Protestant. Those who wish to be are still Orangemen, but they are not the British presence. They are equal and valued citizens of the Irish state. During the Troubles, the UK government portrayed the war as a criminally motivated conflict in which Britain selflessly held the line between sectarian factions in 6 Ulster counties. However, there was no trouble between these same factions in the 3 Ulster counties outside of Crown jurisdiction after the British government left in 1922. Isn't it amazing what can be accomplished when you take London out of the equation? Ending the partition of our country while sustaining the partition of our people, giving it constitutional legitimacy, and imprinting that division with a democratic mandate is a dream come true for the Brits. It ensures that Unionists will remain forever in Ireland, but not of it. It makes us willing accomplices in our national discord. It guarantees that the political malignancy to which Britain historically controlled and manipulated Ireland will endure. Despite the assertion of many Irish politicians, the United Kingdom is not our friend or ally. It is not a force for peace and should not be allowed to define the concept of peace in Ireland. Britain continues to occupy our country. It has invaded, or established a military presence in 171 of the 193 countries that are currently UN member states. Britain has caused chaos across the globe. To cite one of countless examples, it played a pivotal role in engineering the catastrophe in Palestine. More recently, there have been hundreds of Royal Air Force reconnaissance flights over Gaza and aerial bombings throughout the region in support of Israel. We must not be harnessed to Britain's war chariot. We must not be lured into a British border poll by promises of the wonderful things that can happen if we join NATO. Ireland has a democratic right to determine the Irish national question on an Irish national basis without preconditions from unionists, partitionists, or the British government. British jurisdiction in Ireland is an affront to our national sovereignty, an assault on our national democracy, and their openly stated intention to exploit our national territory in any future global conflict presents an existential threat to our national survival. There are those donning the mantle of Irish republicanism who are so shallow, so opportunistic, so cynical. They would support a 32-county Irish state becoming a British protectorate within the British Commonwealth in order to claim they helped to achieve the United Ireland Republicans fought and died for. They reveal a form of corporate narcissism in which they convince themselves that anything they do is Republican, no matter how counter-Republican it proves to be. Wolfe Tone would roll in his grave. Returning to the man himself, Tone tried and failed to bring French Republican forces to Ireland in 1796 and again in 1797, but it was thwarted on both occasions by unfavourable winds and weather. Tone attempted a third time to bring an expeditionary force containing 3,000 men to Ireland. This last action of the 1798 rebellion took place in October when the Royal Navy defeated the French in a naval battle off the coast of Donegal. Wolfe Tone refused an offer to escape and was captured in the uniform of a French officer. Recognised by a fellow Trinity graduate, he was brought to Dublin. Tone was tried and sentenced to death. He was placed in the same cell that his executed brother Matthew had been placed in a month previously. In the cell he found a small razor, possibly Matthew's, and reportedly cut his throat to deny the British government the spectacle of hanging him. He died a week later on the 19th of November 1798. He was 35 years old. The British government would permit only 2 people to attend his burial here in Bodenstown. Sean O'Faolain wrote, "If Tone did not in his lifetime achieve much, he started much. Without him, republicanism in Ireland would virtually have no tradition." Today we honour this intelligent and sincere man who gave the United Irishmen their name, this articulate man who defined their cause, this resourceful and persuasive man who organised 3 invasion fleets in an attempt to free his country from foreign rule and sectarian structure that propped it up. This courageous man who said that if necessary, he would land in Ireland with nothing more than a corporal's guard. We stand today beside the grave of this remarkable patriot to honour his service and sacrifice and to reaffirm our commitment to his ideals. We stand here not as Southern or Northern Irishmen and women, not as Catholics or Protestants, not as inhabitants of this island, nor advocates of insipid all-Ireland institutions, but as united Irishmen and women. We stand today as Tone and his comrades stood then, as unapologetic Irish Republicans. Leaving Wolfe Tone's grave, we take with us an inspiring reminder of what authentic leadership looks like. We depart, re-energized by his immortal words, to subvert the tyranny of our execrable government, to break the connection with England, the never-failing source of all our political evils, and to assert the independence of my country. These were my objects. To unite the whole people of Ireland, to abolish the memory of all past ascensions, and to substitute the common name of Irishman in the place of the denominations of Protestant, Catholic, and Dissenter. These were my means. Of the Republic.
That takes us nearly to the end of our proceedings, and I thank everybody for their attention. I would also like everybody here to give a big round of applause to the colour party who have stood here with dignity correct through that whole time. Absolutely brilliant. I want to thank the medical people that were here and were needed here today for attention for people, and thank them very, very, very much for my efforts. I want to especially thank yourselves. This is some crowd. Republicanism is not dead. So as I said to you earlier, there'll be stuff in the hotel, the Townhouse Hotel in Naas, if any of you want to avail of it, food and things like that there. So, but once again, thanks very much from myself, all the speakers here and the committee for turning up. Now I'm going to get the Sons of Ireland to finish off with a Ram Naviam. Gora Mayavik.
Ready.